which companies should be broken up in order. Rank them and why. Worst behaved tech companies and why. Which one should be broken up first? Who's had the most negative impact on humanity? Number one
it's almost like you're doing my talking points for Facebook here, but I'm big on breaking Facebook up. I think the two acquisitions they were stupidly allowed to make in Instagram and WhatsApp prevented real competition in social media and in social networks, and absolutely they should be broken up. And that's just one remedy, though. I think we should break up Facebook. I think we should break up Google. I think we should break up Amazon. I think there's probably also a case for breaking up Apple, but I think this core idea that we're allowing tech conglomerates that they can have one area where they're really dominant, and then they can use that dominance in that one monopoly area, like Google is doing with search engines, to capture monopolies in other areas, either through acquisitions or conquest, is just bunk. Like, all of antitrust law and practice was sort of focused around this, right? That we didn't want the big trusts that just owned everything. I've been reading Matt Stoller's Goliath book that details how the trust busters in the 20s and 30s took on JP Morgan and took on Standard Oil and all these other things. And you're like, Jesus, yeah, why can't we have some of that? Why can't we have a president who's sort of just out there decrying the fact of monopolist capitalism?
Well, yeah, the problem was the economy. It's how you define it is the issue, because they defined it as like, are the users suffering, and the users were suffering. And when you look at Android or YouTube or Chrome or Gmail and all these free services,
tremendous suffering.
They're being
through
given
the
away for
exploitation
free.
of privacy, right? So targeted advertisement, I
don't think
is
anybody
probably
cares.
one of the worst evils ever been inflicted on the internet, and it's what's given rise to Facebook and Google. So we need to attack targeted advertisement head on. My preferred solution is simply to ban it. That you cannot show advertisement based on personal
data.
Don't
you like targeted ads? Don't you like seeing an ad that's better? I mean, you probably like no ads, but if you did see an ad, wouldn't you like one that's better?
No. This whole idea that relevant ads are a bonus to people is a complete manufactured talking point by the ad tech industry.
Anecdotally, I like seeing targeted ads better, but
do you know what? But then you think through it and you don't. Like when I talk to sort of take the example of someone who just became pregnant. This is an example that's been recounted over and over again because it happens all the time. Let's say they go down to buy a pregnancy test at CVS. That sales that gets sold to a data broker. That data broker sells it on to either Facebook or Google or someone else. And all of a sudden, before you've even told maybe your spouse or your family
it's
that
happening
you're pregnant,
all over the house.
You start getting ads for essentially like, hey, here's a baby stroller. Here's what to do.
And it happens based on your IP
hey, are you
address.
Sure you want to keep it? Here's an adoption agency. Actually, you should get an abortion.
Yeah, but you know the punchline is it happens to every computer in the house because they're using your IP address for your router.
Right.
So like every now and then I'm like, why am I seeing bikinis and bathing suits? And then I like walk by my wife's computer and she's buying, swimsuits. And
that's
I'm like,
your browsing habits.
And I'm like, this is not my browsing habits. I didn't search for this. But I see the brands. I recognize the brand she buys, and then she sees the brands I buy, which is hilarious.
And it's shit.
Yeah.
It's shit. It's not good. And do you know what? I think one of the reasons it's really so not good is because these companies like Facebook and Google, they have found that this is the golden opportunity to turn shit content into gold. Content no longer matters in sort of any sense of abstract idea of quality. The only thing that matters is engagement. So if you can find the most outraging content, that's going to be the most engaging content, the most aversive content. That's the one that performs best for ads because it just doesn't matter what the content is. It just matters whether you keep the eyeballs fixed. Then you can show them ads based on the personal data, not on the content, which you were someone who made content, right? Like Weblogs Inc. and so on. Yeah. Wouldn't you want that, like, say, an Engadget could command a premium because they had like tech stuff? It was
the reason why I'm not
based on that.
Yeah, the reason I'm not in the content business anymore, to be honest, is because it's too hard to do. It's too hard to do because then we had people who were targeting Engadget, and so somebody would run an ad on Engadget, like a small ad buy. They would cookie everybody. Then they would sell that information to somebody else and say, would you like to buy Engadget users?
Yes, and now they've stolen your entire audience.
They stole the audience. And so Nick Denton and I, when he was doing Gawker, we were like, are you letting this other third party on? And they're like, he's like, yeah, they're sending us like a check for $3,000 a month. I was like, I think they're selling Gizmodo and Engadget on the side to Samsung, and Samsung was buying direct from us. They're no longer buying direct. And he was like, oh yeah. Should we kick them out? And we basically colluded to kick them out. We clicked out all the ad networks because we're like, this is screwing up direct sales so
and
badly.
What if you didn't need a cartel to do protection? What if you had basic regulations that simply said you cannot do targeted ads? The value of, say, an Engadget would go through the roof. Like, tech journalism is one of the most profitable ones because, like, people fucking buy phones all the time and they want to read reviews. So this is the natural place to place these kinds of advertisement. This used to happen. Targeted advertisement is a new phenomenon. Like, we literally lived
really
through the birth of it, right?
Yeah. It's super effective. It's too effective. Now, everybody in the content business is just going to subscription. I'm going to subscription with Inside.com. We have advertising. We did over $1 million last year. I'm like, you know what? The advertising, we have to concede at some point that we're not going to be able to build an at-scale advertising company and just start charging people $10 a month for the content.
And no one is. And it is because Google and Facebook literally took, I just did a congressional testimony on this topic in front of the House Antitrust Subcommittee. And one of the data points I pulled out as part of that research was, I think it was 2016 and 2017, 99% of all the growth in internet advertising was captured by two companies. 99%! Like, it sounds like it's not even real, but 99% was captured by Facebook and Google.
Of the gain, year over year, went to them, right? Yes, and it makes sense because if you've ever placed ads, you're like, oh my God, I can target and retarget and find exactly my audience and do these lookalike audiences through AI, and it's just so effective. And then if you don't do it, now your competitors are doing it, so you're in an arms race.
Yes.
I know you took...
That was exactly my argument. My argument in front of Congress was that you're at a grave competitive disadvantage if you do not take sort of availance of the surveillance capitalist system that is powering this ad engine. And that's terrible, that we're handing over an entire industry, internet advertisement, to essentially two companies and a little extra. Is not good. And the consequences of that are startlingly clear. There was just another newspaper, I don't know, conglomerate or whatever that went out of business or went into bankruptcy that runs the Miami Herald and I think 130 other local newspapers. And you go, like, do you want to trade all the local newspapers in all of America, and you know what you get back? You get Facebook.
Ugh.
You're like, holy shit, what a bad trade. What a bad deal, as the president would say, right? A terrible fucking deal for the country.
It's terrible. Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at it, it's such an easy solution. We have to just redefine what antitrust is and how it works, and then just look at the behavior of the companies. If the behavior is really bad, it makes it really easy to say, you know what, behavior's
and the
bad.
incentives. The incentives. This is really what we need to focus on.
Yeah.
Why are Facebook and Google collecting all this personal data? Because it's so valuable. Because they can sell it.
They should have it.
Like,
they should have
the
a
liabilities
limit.
involved with collecting and storing personal data would not be worth it at all if they could not monetize it in the way that they did. So all these privacy scandals we keep having over and over and over again would, I mean, if not entirely, largely disappear because it would simply be hugely unprofitable to run the risk of collecting personal data you do not have a legitimate, express, specified consent for, just to store it. And the thing that really gets me is that I think this would hurt Facebook more than anyone, who's really the ones who need to hurt the most. Like, if you take Google, for example, Google has intent. When you show up on their website and you search for used cars, Los Angeles, that's all the intent you need. You don't need any personal data. You don't need to be able to filter out like who's pregnant and who's not. There's enough intent in that search.